This is Sickle Cell and the Mind, a mental wellness podcast, brought to you by the European Sickle Cell Federation. It's time to reduce social isolation and create new pathways to mental wellness together. You're listening to Sickle Cell and the Mind, a mental wellness podcast, with your host, Leah Lewin.
With me today, we have Victoria and Philip. Victoria, I'm going to hand over to you just to introduce yourself and tell us your connection to sickle cell.
Thank you very much. My name is Victoria Sajowa. I am a doctor and I'm also living with sickle cell, so that's my connection. So I have sickle cell, anemia, HBSS, and I'm currently just finished my foundation training and looking to enter specialty training to decide what I'm going to do for the next 20 years of my life soon.
Perfect, thank you. And also from you, Philip.
Yes, I'm Philip Udeh. My parents would have loved me to be a doctor, so it was good to be a doctor. Yeah. I'm an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. I'm a director of the Ubele Initiative, which is probably one of the largest Black-led social enterprises in the UK. And we've just, I guess we're working towards securing something called the Phoenix Way, which is a 65 million pounds fund for Black and racially minoritized community organizations.
Amazing.
So that would be probably it will be the largest Black-led fund in Europe. And I'm also setting up children's homes. And in my previous life, I have sickle cell. I'm saying a previous life, but my previous enterprise, as I set up a healthy energy drink, because with sickle cell, which I live with, you do suffer with chronic fatigue. And I decided to create a healthy alternative to Red Bull and Monster, which we launched in Sainsbury's, Ocado, Marks and Spencer. And we pitched on Dragon's Den successfully. So if you put my name on YouTube, you can see. I won't give you too many spoilers. But
I will definitely be doing that. Thank you.
Same. Amazing.
Wonderful introductions. So today is episode 4, and we're looking at from education to career. So I guess I want to start with my first question. How does living with sickle cell disease impact a person's educational experiences and their mental health? I'll start with you, Victoria.
So I'd say for me, the impacts really comes in attendance. So starting from like primary school, secondary school, I had a lot of time off of school, constantly having to go to hospital, spend time, come back and just catch up with all the work and catch up with what's going on. And basically feels like I'm starting school again every time. I'd say now that I'm older, through medical school and universities, it was the same kind of thing. I'd have a lot of time off due to having a crisis during an exam or a crisis like when coursework is due and having to get extends and deadlines. So it kind of just made things feel a little bit longer. So it kind of makes it feel like starting again every time often. That's what I'd say my experience really has been with trying to battle education, especially after meds. Med school was a very, very tough time. So increased stress, increased frequency of crisis for me. So balancing that was tough as well.
So it actually increased the frequency of your crises.
Yeah. Because it's such a stressful time, and I think I'm generally not someone that gets very, very stressed, but it's almost impossible not to be stressed when you're studying medicine. So now I think I'm better at it because I've taken some time to myself. But yeah, it definitely increased my career frequency for me.
And Philip, did you have a similar experience, or did you find that yours was different to that?
So I would say kind of similar. I feel like in school, to be honest, I didn't really. It kind of depends. In primary school, I feel like I had a lot of crisis when I was small, like probably like when I was, I think like 9 or 10. I felt like I stopped having as much crisis, and then secondary school. I guess there were certain things like when they would do cross country run, and I might be like last and just like struggling to get around the
Mhm.
thing. And people, it's hard to explain. Well, well, why you lost? Like, like it didn't. I didn't look like I would be unfit or like struggling.
Mm.
But yeah, I would really struggle with those things. Things like I remember actually in primary school, we'd go swimming, and I would always have like pain, like after like crisis pain after swimming, like that kind of mild crisis just in the base of your spine, where you're just feeling that throbbing, just after swimming, because I was too cold, and nobody had considered actually, should this little boy be swimming in winter and then walking back in the cold with everybody else just normally.
Mm.
So yeah, I feel like there were little things like that. And then I feel like in my kind of educational experience, I didn't miss a lot. Not as a child, but in university, I guess going to that next level as a undergraduate, I think, after my first year of uni, that was when I had probably my biggest ever crisis, and I had to spend a month in North Middlesex Hospital.
I know it
Um,
well.
yeah, probably not a place you want to spend a whole month. And that whole August I spent more or less just was in that hospital. I was in intensive care. I had pneumonia. I had kidney failure, and I had to have dialysis. So it was quite challenging. I had like a big crisis, and my body shut down. Um, and I guess one of the challenges I had was, I didn't really give myself time to come back from that. I'd lost about 3 stone in weight. And it was a big shock to the system, to my physical system, but also mentally, because
Yeah.
1 minute you're kind of living your best life. I almost forgot that I had sickle cell. I thought, you know what, I'm doing everything. I'm drinking alcohol, I'm staying out late, I'm partying, I'm doing everything.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden I'm in hospital for a whole month. And, when you lie down in bed for, I think I was lying down for about 3 weeks plus, you have to learn how to walk again. Like you kind of have to re-educate yourself how to walk and stuff,
Mm. Your
so
body is weak.
like it just I think that did have an impact. And then I think I was under pressure, like, oh, just keep going, just get back. So by late September I was already back to classes, and everybody was like, wow, what happened? You look so different, you lost so much weight, what happened? It's like, I was not well, but so I think that's kind of probably one of the more challenging experiences in life. But that did impact my education, I think, as well.
Yeah, it does. And it sounds like, I mean, I did hear you minimize some of your experiences there a little bit, but when it becomes almost normal to you or common to you, we then start to normalize it a bit, don't we?
Mm.
What would you say are, like, when you're transitioning from education to work whilst managing sickle cell, what would you say were the most prominent challenges that you experienced then?
Okay, let me go first this time. So I feel like with a lot of things that I've learned in terms of challenges I face. So I have a younger sister who also has sickle cell, and she's like, well, I think 12 or 13 years younger than me. So
Mm.
she has, I think she's got a lot of benefit from watching my challenges and my experiences. And so you know, just even in her education, she ended up getting extra time for her exams because they acknowledged that her sickle cell has an impact on her.
Mm.
She ended up getting like support materials for study, and then that transitioned into her work life as well, which was stuff for like her desk and comfortable chairs and things that she needed to help her to function. And for me, I didn't have any of it. I just had to work and just like go to work and just be normal, be tired at my desk and just be like, really like fatigued and have to just take sugar and caffeine and things just to keep myself energized. And then the funny thing is by the time I started work, I'd also developed avascular necrosis in both hips, which is quite a severe form of arthritis in both hips. Both of my hips are replaced now, but that's only in the last 2 years. And I've had my career for about 20 years since I graduated. Now I know some people are going to be shocked by this. So I don't want to give away my age too much. Or,
I mean, I was shocked.
well, there you go. I don't want I don't want to give away my age too much, but yeah, I just feel like I just had so much times of just having to push through. Um, and yeah, you're pushing through pain on a daily basis. You're pushing through tiredness. Simple things like, because you kind of look young and fit, people might say, oh, can you help me carry this or this? Or, and sometimes as an entrepreneur, launching my own energy drink, we might have a trade show. We'd have to go to a trade show. To get to a trade show, you might have to carry like a lot of stuff, like a lot of drink samples, fridges, like we had mini fridges we'd have to carry, things like this that you just have to navigate. And, I would find myself always just having ibuprofen just in my pocket at all times. I just have minimum, just loose, not even in the packet, just like loose ibuprofen, liquid tab. Liquid tab is the
I don't
one
know if
that
you tell people that, but
that was just normal. I would just be talking, yeah, just pop one, just yeah, just normalize that in my life. So yeah, pushing through was kind of, I think, my experience of employment.
Thank you. And Victoria, what about you? Especially again in the medical field, going from
Yeah.
education to the workforce and trying to work around and transition through these challenges. What was your experience?
Yeah, I think school was definitely easier to maneuver because I think people were kind of more open to providing help, such as I've got the same thing as Philip's sister. So I got extra time during exams. I was allowed breaks because with the fatigue and everything, I found it difficult to persistently write like our 2 hour exams. I needed that break to recuperate,
Mhm.
not just mentally, but physically. My hands would start cramping and things like that. So those are very helpful. I also got like recording equipment that I used during lectures, and I was able to edit it. I know nowadays we have recorded lectures anyway, but I was able to edit it to suit my need for how I study.
Mhm.
Um, but then moving into the workforce was quite a shock to the system because during my placements, so you get placements in different places, in different hospitals, and I used to, me and my, we had clinical partners, so I used to always tell her, listen, I can do about 3 hours in these days, and then after that I'm going home. So we'd go in at 9 o'clock, get everything we needed to done, 12 p.m., 1 p.m., we're out, and that was what I could manage. But
Mhm.
obviously, transitioning to the workforce, you have um, a 9 to 5. Well, for hospital in as a doctor, you get 12-hour shifts, 12 and a half hour shifts. So 8 to 8 a.m. to p.m. or your night shift, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. or you have like 9 to 4 days or 7 to 4 days. So obviously it was very difficult for me to say, yeah, I'm out at 1 p.m. or so that was definitely a struggle in being able to, and I think for my first year as a doctor I didn't really say anything. I didn't say very much. I
Okay.
had spoke to occupational health, and I was kind of just like, I need to be able to sit down quite frequently, which is tough in the NHS because yeah, there's a lot of things lacking, and we have
Mm.
ward rounds. Ward rounds can go on for hours, and then we're mostly on our feet, and so I'd find after a ward round I'm shattered, like I'd be having to sit down, and people would look at me, and I just didn't. I wasn't very vocal about it. Unfortunately for me, near like the middle of my first year as a doctor, I got admitted into hospital. I had pneumonia, PE, chest crisis. So I spent about 3 weeks to a month off. I was hospital for two of those weeks, and then at home recovering for the next 2 weeks. So that
Mhm.
was when I realized like I actually need to speak up because I'd had some form of pain beforehand, and I kind of just ignored it because I was like, I'm just too busy. I'm actually just too busy at work, too busy in life to take time off for this. And but that knocked me for six. Like after that, I had sick occupational health, and basically the woman was basically like, "Are you sure you want to come back to work?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I need to work." But she was
Oh, as
like,
in quit your
"Pneumonia,
job for life right here.
not quit, but more like take." I think she basically wanted me to take the rest of my first year off. And I was just like, I can't imagine taking 6 months off. Like, what am I going to do? And I need money. Like, I need to get paid, like everything. So I gradually had to just come back slowly, but then she put a very good plan in place. So they cut down my nights, the amount of nights I was doing, the amount of long days I was doing, made sure that all the managers knew that, you know, if it was cold, I'd need to wear a hoodie. Like, we're not really meant to be wearing like outer clothing for
Yeah,
infection control
very much.
reasons.
Mhm.
And that in itself has been a pain. Even during this rotation, every time I come with a hoodie, they're like, you need to take that off. And I have to be I need it.
I need
And I
to be
hate having
warm.
to explain why I need it. Very frustrating. But yeah, so that was more what I think it taught me, just how to maneuver expressing the things that I need and realizing that I'm not like my colleagues. I can't do these 4 nights in a row and then have 2 days off, come back to work the next week. I need a longer off to recover because I am the one that feels the effects if I don't get enough rest. Um, but yeah, that's kind of been my experience, really.
So it sounds like it wasn't just a learning period for them, it was also a learning period for you. You
Very
were
much so.
understanding your limitations and what boundaries you then needed to set. So then, if you were to now, with that experience and knowledge that you've gained, if you had to, um, if you're speaking to employers, what advice would you give them if you were asking them to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for people that are living with sickle cell that want to join the workforce?
My first thing that I would, and I'm saying to everybody, is sick leave. So for people in foundation years, you get 20 days of sick leave. And now that's with someone, for the average person, let's say without sickle cell, without any of the conditions, you get 20 days of sick
Yeah,
leave for the year. Someone like me, I could use that 20 days in a bad month that I have,
longer, yeah.
or a bad 2 months. So by the time I come back, it's like those 20 days are finished. And then the consequence of that is they make you extend your training if you're too far beyond those 20 days. They can extend it by a week or another rotation. So, and I feel like that's quite unfair, realizing that like someone that has a cold is off for a couple of days, or a headache or diarrhea and vomiting, versus someone that has a bad crisis and needs hospitalization. We shouldn't really get the same sick leave level. Like, it's not, it doesn't make sense. And it's not really our fault. So that's always my first thing that I've been trying to battle against, is the fact that it just doesn't make sense
Mm,
for our sick leave levels to be the same, and the consequences of that to be worse for me than it would be for anyone else. Also, things like the battle I have trying to come into work and say, I have to wear this hoodie or this jacket, and people look at me like, but you know about infection control, and I'm like, yeah, I've got a condition. Yeah, but about infection control. And I'm like, okay, my sleeves are going to be lifted up, you know, bare below the elbow, as we always do. But I just need to wear this extra layer. And it's like, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm not going to explanation on the ward that I have sickle cell disease and blah, 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 blah. But it's just
yeah.
things like that. I wish I wouldn't have to over explain myself every time.
Mm,
And I think that's important for employers to actually realize that with various conditions, actually knowing like what is important for each condition and what is important to help someone to facilitate the job. Because I'm good at my job, and I'm able to do it well, but I need help. And I think
mhm,
that's something that's, yeah, that I need better reflected when people start the job.
yeah. Especially in the medical field, it should
Yes.
definitely be something that's identified. It's about preserving dignity, and yet for you to have to feel the need to explain yourself in a public space, it's not appropriate at all. Yeah,
No.
thank
No.
you. Some really good
Yeah.
takeaways there. What about you, Philip? What's your experience? What would you suggest to employers if you wanted them to create a more inclusive and supportive environment?
Yeah, I think, yeah, for me, I guess, you know, I guess for, I guess having sat on both sides of being an employer and also, being employed, I almost feel like, employers need to understand what is, what are the chronic illnesses, what are the hidden things that their staff and teams might be suffering with and might be challenged by. And, I guess be aware that sometimes people may not want to speak up for themselves
Mm,
because, you don't want to be that awkward person in the office when everybody's in the office, everybody's feeling okay. But for you, that AC is just, the AC blowing on you is going to cause, it's going to cause you to have a crisis, or it's going to cause you discomfort. And you just, you don't want to be that awkward person that says, oh, well, can we just turn, so how do you as an employer start to look out for people, start to say, actually, you know what, how do I, make sure that if Philip is there and I know it's cold, oh, actually, let me speak up on his behalf. Let me, but you got to be really educated in what is the condition and what are the adjustments that person might need. Because at times that person may not feel empowered to speak up for themselves and to say, oh, and even me, when I'm in a, I've been an employer, I've been a boss, but I might hide certain things from my team because, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me or anybody to feel like, treat me differently. So yeah, I might carry something heavy, and like it's like I carried the heavy thing, and I'll probably carry
Well,
it, and
isn't
then
it?
afterwards I'll just I'll pop that ibuprofen, and I'll be like I'll just be sitting down for a bit, but so yeah, these are I think some of the challenges is how do we educate employers, how do we get them to understand what could be key triggers that
Mm,
could cause your staff member to become ill. And I think a lot of people you know haven't invested that time, and it could be it could cross over into other chronic illnesses as well, because there are a lot of
mm,
chronic illnesses which often are invisible, and you can't see it just by looking at someone
yeah.
that you have certain types of diseases or disorder. So
Mm,
yeah, I think that education piece is key, for sure. And maybe there's a course that could be offered that people would have to pass a course or something, do some training on chronic illnesses. I think that
yeah.
that would be really good. If there was a certification, like something just could give you just some key things to look out
Elevate.
for that can help you to protect your staff member, because ultimately your staff's well-being is really important for your own,
Yeah.
for your company, for your productivity of your team. You got to look after your staff. So yeah, something like that could be something we could pioneer if it's not out there. Is it out there?
I can
Not
see
that
the
I've seen.
entrepreneur in you. So, with that being said, then obviously you kind of touched on stigma, but what role do you think discrimination plays in career progression when it comes to those with chronic illnesses like sickle cell?
Should I? I'll go first one. Um, I think in my specific career, sometimes there's certain specialties that I've been told that I probably wouldn't be able to do, or probably shouldn't even try to go for. Things like surgery, for like the long hours, and theatres are notoriously known for being cold. But um, but and much as I understand why it might be difficult, I don't think it'll be impossible. And I think there's always things like there's surgeons that sit down, they have their own special chair that is literally wheeled into the theatre for them to use, cleaned and sterilized and made sure that they're able to sit down. People sometimes wear extra layers underneath the gown and the scrub before they scrub into surgery. So but I find that some people think, and maybe because I'm not always able to do the long ward rounds and stand up, I need to sit down quite often. I think there's certain things that just like, oh no, you won't be able to do that, and it's kind of a stigma of you'll probably be too tired for that, or you'll probably get sick after that, and it's kind of frustrating because it's like at the end of the day, I know my body, and yes, it's hard, but if I want to do it, it shouldn't be you probably can't do it. It should be how can we help you do it? Do you know what I mean? That's
Exactly.
how
What
I feel it should
accommodations
be.
can we make to help you succeed?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And Philip, what about you outside of okay, it's a bit different for you because you are an entrepreneur, but you work with teams. So what have you noticed when it comes to discrimination and career progression?
I mean,
That
it's
was
an
a big
interesting
sigh. That was a
one.
very big sigh.
It's a big side. Because don't forget, like, when you have sickle cell in particular, you're black already, right? So, being black, there's already certain barriers and certain things, certain spaces that,
Yeah.
it's not common for you to be in. And then having sickle cell, and to give an example, I feel like, my energy drink, and you can still follow our brand. I've had to put it on pause now because it's a very challenging economic climate to try and launch a beverage brand.
I want
But
to try
it's
it.
food at Drink FUD if you want to have a look. You can find us on Instagram. But the interesting thing for me is that when I would tell my story and say I was inspired to start up a healthier alternative to energy drinks because I have sickle cell, and people would be like, "Oh, what's sickle cell?" People would just like be blank. It's like they didn't know what it was. And I felt like there are a lot of buyers. Like we would pitch places, like different stores. Like we had a healthy energy drink. Places like Planet Organic and Whole Foods never gave us a chance. And I feel like and we were listed in Sainsbury's. We've been in Marks and Spencer, but I feel like there are certain places that just never gave us an opportunity. And I think to some extent, culturally, they would say, "Oh, this guy's story, okay, it's interesting, but what is that? Like, what is sickle cell?" And I think, if I was a white female with fibromyalgia or, something that might be a little bit more well known or more relatable, then, it might well have opened a lot more doors for my brand. So yeah, those are just a couple of examples of where I feel like, well, hold on, like, I've got a story, but I feel, at certain, or with certain, what I would call them gatekeepers within the food and beverage industry, my story just wasn't resonating. So yeah, that was, I think, a challenge that we faced.
Well, there's a lack of representation as well, isn't there? So that we have to keep pushing, but it's also additionally challenging. And when you add in the fact that you're already living with a chronic health condition, trying to battle that, trying to battle the barriers because you are Black, trying to battle against, sorry, excuse me, larger organizations, it's hard. It is hard. It's very hard. And then with the bias and stigma, it layers, doesn't it? Pretty little layer cake. So all is not lost, though. It can be achieved, and there are many people doing the work to help everyone achieve and succeed, yourselves included. How can students and young professionals with sickle cell advocate for themselves in educational and professional career settings? Over to you, Philip.
I think advocating for ourselves, I think it just means being open to being vulnerable and sharing. And, like, a lot of my early stages of my career, I had this avascular necrosis. I would walk with a limp, like quite a relatively significant limp. And not everybody really can decipher, oh, you're walking with a limp, but occasionally you bump into somebody who just kind of, looks at you and says, "Oh, what happened? Why are you walking? Why are you limping?" And it just reminds you, oh yeah, and then you got a choice at that point. I might, definitely in my early career I would say, oh yeah, just like doing martial arts or football, or I would just say something just to like fake an injury and just to keep the conversation going. And I felt like that was the best thing to do. But now I'm different. Now I talk about, my hips, the fact now I've had 2 hip replacements. I tell, a lot of people I meet, yeah, I've had 2 hip replacements because of sickle cell. Sickle cell destroyed my hip joints. And, like I've had to, and people look at me and think, wow, you're so young and how have you had 2 hip replacements? But it's important to tell that story. I have blood transfusions now every 6 weeks. When, let's say, we're going through my diary and it's like, oh, that day, oh, can you do this? I'm like, no, I'm having my exchange transfusion that day. And then people are like, what, you have to have a transfusion? I'm like, yeah, I have to, I've got sickle cell. So, I take opportunities to put my sickle cell into my day-to-day narratives now. Because that's also part of educating people, and I'll say to people, yeah, make sure you give blood. We'll be on a call and I'll say, yeah, sorry, that's my exchange transfusion day. Yeah, make sure you will give blood. Do you know how to do that? Go onto like one of the websites or NHSBT or check Black Blood Matters or all of these kind of people. So, yeah, I just feel like, it's embracing it almost to some extent, and knowing that, having a disability, which sickle cell is, and, embracing it doesn't mean that you're kind of making yourself a victim, but embracing it might mean that you put in place the support you need,
Yeah.
and you give yourself, I guess, the mindset to get through it. And one of the things I support, because I used to be a board member of the Sickle Cell Society for probably about almost 10 years. I've stepped down now just because just too much stuff happening in life. And I still do the children's holiday. So every year we take 30 children with sickle cell, take them on a holiday, a residential holiday, and now we take families as well. So they come
Wow.
siblings, and it's like a whole long weekend away, like campfire. There's like outdoor activities, climbing, like abseiling, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, and one of the things I tell the kids is that sickle cell doesn't stop you. You've just got to be different. You've got to see yourself as like an athlete. If I was a professional athlete, there are certain environments I'll go to. I'll say, no, sorry, I can't eat that, or I can't drink that, or I need to go to bed early, or I need to be warm, or this, because I guess we've got to almost operate as athletes. I almost feel like that's the way we've got to think about
It's a good
ourselves.
mindset.
So yeah, absolutely. Because we can get everything that we want to out of life, but we just got to do things a bit differently and a bit more intentionally.
Yeah. Simply prioritizing your own wellness, but that could never be deemed as negative. It's a really positive thing. I'm just prioritizing my wellness. Love that.
Absolutely.
And thank you. Victoria, how would you suggest that students and young professionals could advocate for themselves?
I'd say, well, I definitely echo what Philip said about being vulnerable, because advocacy starts with awareness. If they don't know about it, they can't help you. If they don't know about it, then there's nothing to advocate for, because you have to first explain what is sickle cell. I know it's frustrating. It's very frustrating having to always explain it, and I think that's a problem in itself. But being able to people that, especially people that are willing to hear, especially like for me, after my first year as a doctor and realizing that being silent wasn't helping anyone, it was actually making me worse. I had to become very, very open about just being like, look, this is exactly why I can't do this. So I, for example, went less than full time. So I work 80% of the hours that of a doctor does 100%. So for me, that means a lot of my hours are cut back, a lot of my nights are cut back. And someone the other day was like, "I was very strange for someone, in their first 2 years to be working less than full time." And I was like, "Yeah, I have sickle cell." And they were like, "Oh, you didn't need to." And I was like, "No, like it's important that you know that I'm not just, even if there was any reason I was going to less than full time, which is my business, but just making you aware that, like, I have sickle cell, and I've had a few complications over the past couple of years that mean I can't work the same hours as my colleagues. And much as I tried, and I really did try, my body was like, nah, you can't do that, friend. So I think it's important, and not just for me, but for people coming up behind me, other doctors with sickle cell or other conditions, knowing that if they mention it, someone might say, "Oh," someone might say, "Oh, actually, I've heard of that. There's another doctor I knew that had it, or there's another doctor I knew that had this condition, and she did this." Like I've had a few people come to me now and ask me about working less than full time, and I've encouraged them to do it, and they only thought about it because I was like, "This is why I did it for myself." But there's other conditions as well. And I think just being very vocal and honest about your capabilities too. And
Yeah.
for example, occupational health is a very good resource and HR in jobs, and just being like, this is what this is what this condition is. This is what I am able to do, and this is what I am able or not able to do. And they're very good at disseminating the information to the wider team, so you don't have to repeat yourself so many times. They will send the emails out to supervisors, the manager on the ward, nurses in charge, to say this doctor has to do this or can't do this, rather than me have to repeat myself seven,
Over and
eight,
over.
9 times. So I
Yeah.
think that's also very good, and being maybe making sure that you speak to the right people. So don't just tell people that can't help you. Tell people that can help you.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's what my advice would be as well.
So you mentioned a couple of resources there, which is great. What about mental health resources that would be most helpful for managing stress and balancing work and health and even your personal life?
If I'm being completely honest, I'm very much on a mental health journey myself. I haven't been very good with prioritizing that. I recently started therapy privately,
Mhm.
which I think has been one of the best things I could have ever done. So I
Yay
do
for
that.
therapy. I'm here for
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. And at first I thought, oh, you know, I'm fine. Like, I don't actually need therapy. Like, there's nothing really majorly wrong, I'd say, with my mental health. Until I started, and I was like, there's so many things I have suppressed, and there's so many ways sickle cell has affected my mental health more than I could ever imagine, more than just the pain aspect, or more than just complications. Like, the way I perceive myself, my body, my capabilities have been so affected by sickle cell. Even the way I approach, you know, opportunities and doing things, because and I think that's actually helped me to speak more about it. So I have my own page that I talk about what it's like to be a doctor with sickle cell, and what it's like to train with sickle cell, and what's it like to be in medical school with sickle cell. And I show snippets of my life, you know, from when I'm fine to when I'm in hospital to when I'm at work. And I think that's really been a great outlet for me as well, for my mental health, just being able to reach out there and have people respond in other business sectors and other jobs, being like, you know, this has helped me to be more vocal at my place of work. Or I've just sent, someone said to me, I just sent my boss your video just to explain what sickle cell is. And I was like, that's so good. Having those kind of
Mhm.
resources as well has helped not only me to share my thing, but only also make me feel like I'm not really alone as well. So much
Yeah.
of my life, my adolescent life, I felt very much alone. And now I don't, which has been amazing.
It's building that community, isn't it? So that you're not
Hmm.
feeling so much isolation. And I want to reflect a bit on what you said about you not thinking there was anything wrong with your mental health. And it's really important that we acknowledge the fact we walk, we watch our diet, we do all of these things for our physical health. Seeing a therapist isn't just for when things go wrong. It's not
Hmm.
about waiting until there's a problem and that we're struggling. It's the natural upkeep. Life in general, without any additional barriers, complications, or any sort of illness, is very complex now. There's so many factors. And just maintaining a healthy balance when it comes to your mental health should always be a priority. Like we said,
Absolutely.
prioritizing our own health and wellness. Um, but yeah, the impact of sickle cell is much bigger than just the crisis. It's the aftermath. It's everything in between. It's the fear. It's the stigma. It's the discrimination. It's the lack of control, which again impacts our mental health, but also how it manifests in intergenerational trauma. It's something I do a lot in my work and I write a lot about. It's how we then pass on our experiences through epigenetics, but also through our philosophical beliefs and things like that
Hmm.
from parents, other family members as well. And it's been proven from back in the Holocaust how we transfer all of this information. So it's really important that we are ensuring we're very rounded with the care that we provide for ourselves. Philip, back to you. So, what mental health resources um, would you say would be most helpful when trying to manage the stress and balancing work health and personal life?
So yeah, I think what Victoria mentioned around doing some psychotherapy, I've been on that journey as well privately. And actually, I feel like these are things that should be NHS should be saying, look, you've got a chronic illness, your body is, your body can let you down. This is one of the things that I think people don't like get the mental burden you're carrying, right? Number one, you could be in constant pain. And, I started calculating it, like the mental energy it would take me to get up and just
Mm,
walk to the bathroom and come
swing.
back and sit down. It's energy. Like it's physically like you have to work. You've got to push through a pain barrier to do simple things, right?
Yeah.
So what is the mental load you're carrying? Knowing that paranoia that, hey, if it's too cold outside and I get rained on, or something happens, or if I go swimming in that, in that pool, is it warm enough? Am I going to be able to get out and get warm quickly? And, you're calculating, getting a flight. Sometimes you got to think, oh,
Yeah.
I'm flying for too long. And, sometimes it's not even, like you try and use that air pressure, put the air thing on and turn it off. And it's cold on these flights. It's always like not right. The oxygen level is low. So sometimes you got to get the extra oxygen now. It's another thing to start looking at is when you're flying with sickle cell to book the oxygen like cylinder and they can give it to you so you can have it on the flight. But yeah, I just feel like that mental load is real, and why shouldn't we have access to NHS provided
Mm,
psychotherapy? And I think that's something we should be pushing for,
mm.
along with some of the other things, free prescriptions that are still not available for people with
Yeah.
sickle cell who are taking prescribed medicine every day
Every
of
day.
their lives. So how can it be fair that we don't get and I think, yeah, that there's a business element of some of these things as well. The way you look at it and you think, people make money from us with sickle cell. They prescribe us all these drugs and all these new things,
Mm,
hydroxychloroquine and Veloxetor. Is it Veloxetor is the one that they brought and then they took it away again? And it's just like, all these things. Why don't you give us why don't you give us the gene editing stem cell
mm.
transplants, so we can be cured of sickle cell? Yeah, that might cost a couple $100,000, for someone to have that treatment. So, those are the areas I just feel like, what, how can we, I guess, advocate and campaign and push and mobilize together? Because, yeah, I feel like we don't often get, I don't know, we don't often mobilize with one voice as a sickle cell community. And, everyone's kind of suffering in their own separate ways. And how do we come together, and what are the forums and platforms for us to join our voices together? So
Mm.
that's why this kind of thing is really brilliant, and the work Jenica does is brilliant. And we have to do more, I think, to just bring people together to have these conversations, because people need to get angry and realize, hold on, we should be getting free prescriptions, we should be getting access to new treatments. So
Mm. I could talk to you guys all day. It's been a great conversation, and I think that's why these podcasts are so important, because I mean, I've had my light bulb moment again today, and I'm sure many other viewers will have theirs as well. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add.
I want to ask Victoria a question,
Go ahead.
because Lee, as a doctor and a patient within the system, how has it kind of changed, I guess, your experience of having sickle cell, now being a professional in the system and then observing the treatment and care that you receive within the same system?
Good question.
That's a fantastic question. I think it has further pushed my desire to advocate for other people, not just myself. I find that now whenever there's a sickle cell patient on in the hospital, I'm always the one that's like, can I go see them? Can I look after them? Can I? And I'm like, where are they? What floor? And I'll make sure that I'm on the same floor as them. I make sure I don't, not that I'm necessarily going to tell them I have sickle cell, but I'm going to be like, I understand you. Like, I really do understand you. And I'm always very, very quick to make sure that I tell people what is needed. If someone comes in with sickle cell, have you given their painkillers already? Have you given them their fluids? What are you doing about, how they feel right now? What are you doing about getting them a bed? I had a consultant last year who had a patient with sickle cell, and she was like, I don't really know anything about sickle cell, got no clue. And I looked at her and I was like, well, I know loads. What do you want to know? Because I was like, that's not the attitude that we need to have right now. So it's made me very much be kind of hyper aware for people around me that have sickle cell, to make sure that their experience is not one of the experiences that we hear in the news far,
Yeah.
far, far too often. And I think also, I think the other side of it is that knowing what's going on in my body, I know it too well, if that makes sense. So now that like complications happen, it's kind of scary because I know exactly what's happening. So when I had
Mm.
pneumonia, when I had my blood clots and all of that, I just kept thinking, I know exactly what's going on in my body and I'm terrified right now. So that's, I think it was kind of easier before I was doctor, that I didn't really know what was happening in my body. I know I was having something sickle cell related and something complicated, but now I know exactly what's going on. It's kind of making me like,
blessing and a curse.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's how it feels sometimes. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I think, really interesting, as you said, like, even just the thing of learning more about technically
More
what's
and
happening in your body
mhm.
alone. It just changes how because you're kind of diagnosing yourself, like
Yeah.
knowing what's happening, and I guess how dangerous it is, how
Hmm.
dangerous a crisis can be. And
Yeah.
it's great that you're in the system as an advocate with sickle cell.
Yeah.
You're doing that good work, because a lot of nurses and doctors, they're overstretched. They don't know enough, maybe don't empathize enough. So
Hmm.
yeah, having you there, that can be a life saving intervention that you could be making in that
Yeah.
moment. Yeah, well done, thank you.
Thank you. My real desire and goal is to really like teach sickle cell around the hospitals, like for professionals directly in ED,
Mm.
especially because ED is the department that really needs the help.
Oh
Um,
yes.
so what that looks like for the
You do
future, I
that.
don't know, but that's my aim really.
I'm waiting to see it. I'm waiting for that announcement. I'll be looking out for it. No pressure, but we're waiting. Eyes on. Thank you both. It's been a brilliant conversation. It's been a wonderful episode. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being so honest and adding such incredible value to the podcast series. And thank you everyone for watching. Keep watching for future episodes. This is episode 4. We have another 5 to go. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Thank you so much for having us.
If you have been affected by any of the topics discussed in this episode, please reach out to the European Sickle Cell Federation so we can signpost you to the relevant support services in your country. Our email address is office@escfederation.eu.